Hello, and welcome to another episode of Inside the Industry, brought to you by the NAACP Hollywood Bureau. My name is Kyle Bowser, and today we're going to look into the intersection between two different worlds, the world of sports and the world of activism. We've invited two guests to join us in this discussion, the first of which is a dynamic storyteller, producer, and director, Mr. Rob Hardy, from Rainforest Films. Rob, of course, has produced and directed so many things that we're all so familiar with. Film titles like No Good Deed and Think Like a Man, Stomp the Yard, of course. I go all the way back to Toi. But then also television programs like BET's The Quad and Prodigal Son and Power and Shameless and Blackish and of course, All American, which is on the CW, but you can also now see it on Netflix. And Rob has recently been tapped to direct the new pilot of the prequel to Power, known as Canaan's or Raising Canaan, right?
Raising Canaan, that's it. Yeah.
Welcome, sir.
I
Glad you could
appreciate
join
you
us.
having me, man.
No,
It's
no,
good to be
listen.
here.
Listen, I know that you are a proud graduate of FAM University. But also, I recently learned that you're from Philadelphia, which is my hometown.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Hey, man, straight out of G-Town, Manheim and Wissahickon.
right.
So, I love the Philadelphia all day. But
There
yes,
it
I
is.
represent the Florida A&M University.
Right. Now, did you play sports there?
Yeah, in high school, I played football and I ran track. I didn't
Oh,
play
wow.
anything in college though.
Right. See, I didn't know
Yeah,
anything about your athletic prowess. I know you're from Philly, so I know you can slap box. So that counts,
yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely.
Let's also bring into the conversation Jamal. Jamal Henderson is the president of Spring Hill Entertainment, which, of course, is the behemoth entertainment company now that was founded by LeBron James and his partner Maverick Carter. Jamal is from Buffalo, New York. Is a proud graduate of Colgate, and also got his MBA from Northwestern. Jamal started his career at Deloitte, went on to manage brands like Mountain Dew and Brisk for PepsiCo, but then made a transition into the entertainment business, where, as I said, he runs Spring Hill Entertainment. And of course, they've got a plethora of credits under their belt in a very short period of time, including the Madam C.J. Walker Project on Showtime and the Muhammad Ali documentary at HBO, The Wall for NBC, and so many other things. Survivor's Remorse at Showtime. So I'm glad that we have these two gentlemen here today to help us talk about these two worlds of sports and activism and how this third world that we all operate in, Hollywood, deals with that intersection. So let's jump into the conversation. The first question I want to ask you is, what parallels do you find in the drama of sports and the story structure that we all have to deal with when we're reading scripts or producing programming? What connections do you see between those two?
I'll let you take that,
when I
Rob.
look
You're the
at both.
all American. I'll let you take that one.
What's up, Big J, man? How you feeling, man?
Man, I'm good. I'm blessed.
I love it. I love it. So one of the things that I think always compels us about sport is that they're ultimate gladiator stories. It's a person against the element. It's the team. It's sacrifice. It's perseverance. It's overcoming. All those things are like synonymous with good storytelling, and it's like that because those are all universal themes that we as people can appreciate. And I think that's the reason why we why we love sports is because it doesn't really care how you're feeling. So whether it's Michael Jordan years ago with food poisoning and pulling up, whether it's, LeBron James running down behind somebody with a late start and getting the block to change the momentum of the game. It's that fighting to make something happen when there's seconds left on the buzzer. We all identify with that. We all identify with that pressure. And I think that's what makes storytelling great, when you can come up with ideas and themes that whether you are in Compton or China, you can relate to just by like what we go through as human beings. And I think that's kind of an important way to bring us all together.
That's a really good point. So Jamal, you work with a person who is very, very familiar with the dynamics that Rob just spoke of, that sort of digging down deep and finding the you that you didn't know existed. How does that manifest itself in the way that Spring Hill approaches the storytelling that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think we feel the same way what Rob said. I mean, I think we think sports sometimes is better than anything you can imagine in a screenplay because it's really just real life and it's unpredictable and it's and what we try to do at Spring Hill is obviously try to be as great as LeBron is on the court, you know, with
Wow.
everything we do in terms
That's
of
a tall order,
storytelling.
brother. That's a tall order.
Yeah. Well, you know, Rob knows because I'm always trying to get something going with him too. But we're trying to put together those packages, right? So whether it be something like Madam C.J. Walker, which you mentioned, you know, which is a project that now, you know, Octavia is Emmy nominated for. It's a mini series we're super proud
Nice.
of that people might not
That's
have
great.
expected to come out of, you know, our production company, but it is exactly how we try to build things. So we're always striving for greatness, which is a big mantra that we have around LeBron, and that's what we're trying to do with the storytelling. So
Got it.
I think you know, I think sports is a big driver in that. Everybody that works here was an ex-athlete in some regard. You know, definitely not at the level of Mr. James, but you
Well,
know,
you played
we
football at
all
Colgate, right?
yeah, yeah, of course, you know, glory days, you know, swiftly past college, you know, but yeah, we all did it. And I think what that breeds is a lot of competitiveness and it also breeds a good teamwork. And as we know, all in the entertainment business, this is a team sport. You know, not
Right.
any, you know, it takes people above and below the line to tell these stories.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned it's a team sport because I find the Hollywood process to be very collaborative in that same way. And so people who have that muscle already, who develop that in the area of athletics, are probably used to that and can work under those conditions very easily. So we've started with a sort of a wide angle lens on the discussion. Now let's bring it in a little bit closer and ask about how these dynamics of telling sports stories can also push the envelope with regard to social activism. Do you see opportunities for that in the work that you do?
Yeah, for
I
sure.
absolutely do. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you know, we do a lot in the documentary space, and so we've made a couple projects like Shut Up and Dribble for Showtime, and you know, obviously the Muhammad Ali documentary that we did with Antoine Fuqua. We continue to tell those stories, and I think in the doc space, which is a hot space right now, there's a lot of opportunity to tell those stories. And then on the narrative side, obviously, you know, we're trying to tell those stories as well. But I think there's so much that hasn't been told yet, so we think that through content can come activism, through content can come knowledge and discovery of projects, and so that's what we try to do with everything that we're putting in the world.
Right. Rob, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, no, listen, I second that effort, and you know the two projects that we've done that deal with sports are both the Quad and All American, and you know for me, I'm a football guy, so they both dealt with football, and it's again bringing everybody together through sports, and then all of a sudden now you have this melting pot of people, and then behind that you get a chance to pull back the layers and get into you know where people are from, their dynamics, and you know looking at All American in particular, one of the things that I was really excited about with that project was you take a kid from Crenshaw, from our neighborhood, and then he gets this golden ticket in quotes to go across town and play football, you know, at Beverly High. And then the thought from his community is, oh, well, you've made it because you go over there, but then you realize that they have their own set of problems. And I think that within those two worlds, you get a chance to see, you know, despite how it's shown in the media, how beautiful and amazing and creative, you know, that neighborhood is in South Central, how much art and culture and history is there,
Right.
right? And you also get a chance to, on the flip side, see how in Beverly Hills and places like that, they have their own share of problems. They just look different. And I think that those two things, you know, again, bring people together and give us a chance to understand that, you know, while the rapping may be a little bit different and the sensibility may be a little bit different, fundamentally, you know, we're all the same people.
Right. You know, often we hear these adages about sports being a level playing field, and that's the plane on which we can certainly be judged by sheer merit, as opposed to some of the other ancillary issues that come into real life. But is that really true? Because every athlete lives, you know, in a larger society as well. You got to take off your uniform and put on your street clothes and go home, and things aren't going to be equal there, as you show
Right.
in All American. So I wonder if this notion of sports being a level playing field is really true, and how we go as storytellers go to expose the falsity of that.
I don't really know that it's a level playing field. I think that it is an outlet for a lot of people to express themselves, and a lot of people to make the transition from your situation to something different because of sports. I think that you're right. I think at 10 p.m. in a car, we all look the same to some cops. I think that, there's still, to give Jamal a shout out, there's a survivor's remorse when you are the one that kind of comes to this new level and so many of your friends and family members are not. And then how do you deal with that, So I think that where it is kind of level is people competing, as gladiators to reach a goal. I think that part is level, but everything else that's tied around it to how it's coached, who coaches it, how it's refed, the contracts that you get, the money that you get when you trade teams. You can just look at what's happening with Cam Newton and Jameis Winston with their track records versus, based on what they're getting on their new teams versus some other people that don't have those track records. All those kind of things, say to me that playing field isn't quite level.
Right.
But there are a lot of great opportunities that are there. There are.
Right. And so the black athlete then, who finds himself sometimes riding this fence between a world of adoration on one side, where his performance, his or her performance, is so greatly appreciated, and on the other side of the fence is the reality of their lives, and if not their lives, certainly their cousin's life, and how they're condemned in those spaces and carrying that weight. I don't know if you see it with LeBron, but carrying that weight, I'm sure it becomes a distraction even to their performance as athletes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, obviously LeBron is he's 101, man. Like the weight he carries and what he's able to do and what he's doing now with voting rights in a real way. I think that really, but what you're talking about is the guys who aren't LeBron and who are just. But I think it's a tough one. It's a expectation that we put on these brothers that maybe not even warranted. But for the ones that are educated and can do it, I think that they're making a real push. I love what the NBA is doing right now. I think that, everything that they're doing with guys is important. And I think it has to come from a real place. What we find
Right.
is when it's real and guys really care about it and they do the work, then that's what matters. I don't think it needs to be lip service. If you're not about it, then don't be about it. I think
Right.
stand here. And I think I think it's exciting, this social awakening that's happening, because, what we stand for is empowerment. And I think athletes see that they have the power and they have the leverage to make the moves they want to make. And I think it's inspiring, and we want to be supportive of all that,
Right.
whether it be storytelling or whether it be political action or whatever the work is.
Let's talk about that issue of power and leverage for a second. So I recently produced a documentary in association with the NFL about a gentleman named Fritz Pollard, who was the first African American to play for the NFL. He was there when the league launched in 1920. He was the first player, the first African American quarterback in the league, and also the first black coach in the league. And actually helped to popularize the sport of football throughout the 1920s. But then as we rolled into the 30s and the country was in economic depression, the league owners got together and decided to ban all black players. And that ban remained in effect for 12 years. And during that time, Fritz Pollard and some others launched essentially a Negro football league, which no one has ever heard of. We all know about the Negro baseball league, but not football. He was actually a co-owner of the Harlem Brown Bombers during that time. But always advocated for the the reintegration, I should say, of football, which eventually did happen in 1947, a year before Jackie Robinson played for the Dodgers, right? So this is a sort of a lone hero. There were a handful of other players, but he really was sort of the poster child for the movement at that time. But we now, I'm going to share you some statistics with you guys. We now are looking at a football league that has 70% of its players being African American, a basketball league where 75% of its players are African American. How can those players use their numbers? They're no longer minorities in that space, right? How can they use their majority status to really push for social justice issues, or should they? Should that be their obligation? Are they obligated to be social justice role models?
You know, I think that there is an obligation to do something. I don't think that anybody has the right to tell you what that something is for you. But I do feel like because of that position, some people are big on social media, some are big behind the scenes, some just write checks. Whatever that thing is, I think that we're all obligated to do something because we have access. And there's so many people that look like us that don't. And the only way that we change the move the dial is to help them. I know from a guy that's not playing in the NBA, it definitely seems that the NBA and the WNBA are really on the right track as far as leading this social justice cause in the right direction. It seems to me, from my position, that the league has supported its players and given them the leeway to protest, to use their voices, to do things. And I think that speaks volumes, because when people want to cut on a basketball game to escape and they see their favorite players wearing Black Lives Matter or saying something that says vote or hope or Breonna Taylor or whatever those things are, it reinforces a message that, even though I'm successful, even though, I'm out here living my dream, that we're still together. We're still the same community, and what you feel, I feel. I just live in a different zip code. And I think that's important.
Unless your jersey says Jimmy Butler. Right?
But Jimmy might have his program on the side.
That's right. Exactly. Everybody's doing their part in their own way.
Exactly.
Right? So let's bring this back to Hollywood. First, what I'm going to do, I'm going to share a little bit more of the statistical numbers with you, and then try to make an analogy to Hollywood. So we have 3 Black head coaches across 32 teams of the NFL. Okay, that's like 9% of the coaches are Black. We've got 8 Black head coaches in the NBA across 30 teams. That's 27%. There's 1 Black manager across the 30 MLB teams, Major League Baseball teams, right? That's Dave Roberts in Los Angeles Dodgers. We've got 1 Black NBA owner. That's Michael Jordan. And we have 1 Black minority share owner in Major League Baseball. That's Derek Jeter. Okay. There's 0 Black owners in the NFL. These are paltry numbers compared to the majority population that African Americans represent in all of those leagues, right? Well, not baseball, but football and basketball, certainly. My question to you is, how do those numbers relate to this experience that we have in Hollywood? There's a large Black talent pool in Hollywood as well. And we don't have a lot of ownership. Thank God we have people like Rainforest and Spring Hill, but we don't have a lot of Black ownership of the content that's being created. So what nexus is there between the sports and activism that we're pursuing in Hollywood?
Well, I think that kind of depends on what level you look at it, right? You have the network or studio level, where they definitely have the, BET, which at least at one time was owned by Bob Johnson, TV Ones, Kathy Hughes, to Bounce TV, so you have outlets like that, where, Revolt, Aspire, where they're full on, minority owned. Even I think maybe El Rey might be in that pool too.
Sure.
And there are a lot of people that have deals. What I found is that there are a lot more, now more than ever, content creators, Black content creators that have bigger deals. I don't know that necessarily get the first dollar gross type numbers that the Steven Spielbergs of the world get, but definitely ones that have, deals to be able to hire people, do projects, and, not necessarily, and have the ability to greenlight a project and take it close to the food chain. There are only a few people that really have the greenlight project, the greenlight authority to say, oh, I'm Tyler Perry. If you bring that to me and I want to make this, we're making this. And I don't have to go pitch this to somebody. I'm just going to make it. I don't know that there's, a ton of people like that. but there are definitely a lot of, decision makers, shot callers, and it's way more, the numbers are a lot bigger than when I first started in this game, 15 years ago.
Jamal,
But
do we always have to carry the mantle of pushing the social agenda, or can we just be storytellers that tell engaging and entertaining stories?
I think look, I'd love to do a little bit of both. Look, I think it's all our purpose. At Spring Hill, we're trying to do both. We're trying to tell commercially viable stories, but we're also trying to say something. So I think the two can coexist. I don't think it just needs to be junk food, to service that. I think Self-Made is an example of that, where it drove 30 million households. Octavia Spencer Emmy nomination, but also, it's a story that people have been trying to get made in this town for years,
Right.
And we had amazing Black women at the center of that, with Casey Lemons and Janine Sherman Barwell writing it. And, Octavia. So again, us just being a platform for that to happen, not, it ain't, that ain't, and so I think what Rob says is absolutely right. I think your stats were fascinating. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. It's a mirror image of the ownership here in the town. And I think I'd like to think that here, I think this moment is a time where we can push and leverage, what's happening in sports, but also do it
No
here.
doubt.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what we're trying to do with our company, is we want to be another one of those lighthouses that has the power, right? So we're not just trying to have a deal, but also be a place that can greenlight something, or finance something. And what we're not doing indie films. We're trying to do things that, again, have big eyeballs and wide releases, but it starts the conversation. And so there's a bunch of people that we stand on the shoulders of, and Rob mentioned some of them, right? Because they've been doing the thing here for a long time. And I think all of us coming together in this moment is exactly what's going to happen to turn the corner on that. Because there's a moment, there's a crack. We just got to run through it right this second.
It is a moment, and we would ordinarily be doing this in the same space, but because of COVID, we're separated, and so it seems like there's life before and after COVID. But in many ways, there's life before and after the protests that we've recently seen in the streets. Right? We know that has birthed some enlightenment, if you will, in society, and I think Hollywood is also beginning to understand that it's a new day, and new voices need to be heard. So I'm glad to see the two of you and the companies that you represent are involved in those discussions. I want you to know, if you hadn't known, that the NAACP is now also joining those ranks. We have a development deal of our own now that we're very, very proud of. But I think all of us can play in the sandbox together and tell some amazing stories that perhaps would not have been told just a year or so ago.
I agree. And look, congrats to you guys on that big deal. That is huge. And look, to Jamal's point, I agree. I don't think that everything has to be edutainment, but I still think that you can have a commercial hit that's just a fun popcorn movie, but then still behind the scenes have initiatives and things like that still benefit people. But when you look at it, it's like, oh man, that was a fun movie, but you hired a bunch of, newer people, you trained a bunch of people, you got programs, and that's what I mean by everybody does something, even if you don't see it. We're all kind of like still working,
Sure.
to change the game. So I love seeing that. I love seeing the moves that people make, and I think that it's our time to shine when we just have the right mentality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what should we be on the lookout from you two guys on? What projects should we all be anticipating to microwave our popcorn at home to watch?
Well, we are number one, All American season 3 is about to start shooting soon, so that should be going. So excited. The pilot that you mentioned, Raising Kanan, which is the origin story of 50 Cent's character Kanan, that we got shut down like right after we finished the pilot, so we'll start that again. And my business partner Mitzi Miller and I, are doing we have a few projects happening. So, we have one that I want to say, the ink is almost dry. So,
Right.
We'll be back in the movie space again, but we're doing something really cool with Amazon
Right.
and one of our real famous ladies. So I can't wait to talk more about that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And you, Jamal?
We're rolling, man. We got one that I hope is definitely not. I hope you got to go to the theaters to see. That's Space Jam, which we're finishing up.
Oh,
That would be
wow.
next summer.
Can't wait.
Yeah, excited on that one. It's coming out great, and we're in post, a lot of posts on that one. And then, you know, on the documentary side, we're super active. We got a couple projects coming out next month. On one on Netflix called The Playbook, and then another on Disney Plus called Becoming.
Wow. Okay.
Nice.
Well, we're excited about those projects. We're excited about the things you've done in the past. We can still access all that content. Pay attention to what the NAACP is doing. We're doing some big moves, and we want you guys to be involved with some of the stuff that we look to develop in the future. So we'll be reaching out for that. I want to thank you for your time today on Inside the Industry. This is a series that we decided to launch out of the Hollywood Bureau to help people gain access to information that they might not otherwise have, with insiders like yourself sharing news on the process. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll talk real soon.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right.
All right.